How does this play out in terms of the relationship, which we've seen to be very important, between special education and curriculum? This is one of the biggest barriers of all. When Barry Finley became the head of special education within the province, one of the first things he insisted on was that the separate building that the special education department was in was sending out a bad signal to the rest of the province. So it needed to be in the same building as curriculum and all the other departments. We've seen some of our boards have actually located Education for Some Good for All, not in the special education department, but in the curriculum department. Or they've created new roles that blend these two departments together, breaking down the old territorial silos that exist and separate the two distinct units over time. But we've seen other boards who think the problem can be resolved by appointing a third person. So you have two separate departments, but they appoint a third person, one or two tiers down, to work across the two departments. They're expected magically to create the integration, but it drives them crazy because they have the expectation but no authority that comes with the level of seniority required. Or in other cases, we've got the special education coordinator or assistant superintendent who spends up to 40% of their time in their car driving around the province, dealing with looking at identifying particular students personally because they passionately feel, and it's an expression of their passion, that they need to know every identified student within the board. But this reduces the time for working with the curriculum department. So we see many ways in which this tension is played out. How is it played out for you? How do you address it? Is the elephant in your room that you expect special ed and regular teachers to work together in classrooms, but your consultants and administrators are not working together within your board, and your teachers see that, and it works all the way through the system? How do and can you address this over time? This is one of the key issues. A second relates to the kinds of tools that people use, and here we see a set of dilemmas that some people don't see as dilemmas at all around issues of particularly assessment and differentiated instruction and technology. Many of our boards were passionate, and we saw some remarkable effects of assistive technology on identified students' confidence, on their ability to use word queue, on the use of Kidspiration, on the voice recognition software. Kids who couldn't write a sentence barely could now produce entire paragraphs or more than that with the use of technology. And in some cases, when they went back to regular classrooms where technology was a routine part of use for all students within the classrooms, they fit right in, and the confidence they gained with their training was a platform for further achievement. But if they went back into classrooms where the regular teacher used little technology, and they were an adolescent, and they stood out because they were the ones who needed technology, then they quickly dropped them as if they were the only person who needed a stick, or the only one in a wheelchair, or the only one with a walker. And they didn't want to stand out. So it's a question not only of how you help the special education student, but the use of technology for all your students, so everyone is different, not just some are special and disadvantaged. And then we saw some issues around that came up a lot for people about the tension between what they saw as differentiated instruction and non-differentiated assessment in terms of particularly testing and EQAO. Why, people said, are we expected to have differentiated instruction, but we have a standardized assessment that doesn't allow for variations and differences over time? And this related to use of data. In some schools, principals were very good at engaging all their teachers in many different uses of data and many different kinds of assessment. And teachers would speak with passion about every child for whom a number represented as they followed them on the data wall. This wasn't just a set of numbers or scores, it was a trigger to talk about the unique needs and personality of every child, who the special ed, the regular teacher, the grade 1, the grade 6 teacher will all engage in together anyone who knew that child. But in other cases, teachers saw great tensions between perhaps a principal who was overly driving, even with circles on the chart, conversations about how to move the 2.7s, the 2.8s, and the 2.9s up to a 3. And the amount of time, attention, and conversation that was dedicated to that. And the charts that showed how many were on level 3 proficiency now, and how the percentage will be increased if all the 2.7s, 8s, and 9s moved up there. And the distraction, because sometimes it's other people who are the distractors. The distractor that teachers felt when they could spend less time on those who were 1s and 2s. And many teachers said to us, given a choice of moving a 2.9 to a 3 or moving a 1 to a 2, I'd rather put my energy in moving a 1 to a 2 anytime, because that makes the bigger difference for the student, more than just to the numbers. I should tell you, in England, by the way, I think I mentioned this before, the last remaining test is currently under review because of what the UK coalition government calls the perverse incentives that standardised testing causes applied to all populations, of teaching to the test and concentrating on some students who make the numbers look good at the expense of other students. Whether this is seen as a dilemma or not rests not only in the numbers and the assessments, but also how leaders and teachers together use the numbers to initiate conversations about all students and the progression of their achievement over time, whether they're a 2.8 or whether they're a 1. But it is a dilemma that most teachers and leaders feel they have in some fundamental way to encounter.